Good morning, and welcome back to the More You Shouldn't Know podcast, your favorite streaming platform to learn more about the religion of Shintoism. On today's episode, edited and recorded by
MICHEALA Miller,
Caroline Howley,
James Satterfield.
We will teach you about all the basics you need to know about Shintoism. This episode will provide you with a clear understanding about the foundations, core beliefs, and many other important aspects you may need to know about when discussing Shintoism.
Now, as many of you may know, Shintoism is the primary religion of Japan alongside Buddhism. But what many don't know is that Shinto is one of the few religions that do not have an acknowledged founder. This, along with the lack of a single doctrinal text, allow for flexibility within the religion, as Shinto is an essential part of life for the Japanese people. Another major aspect of their lives are the kami, or the holy figures of Shinto. There are said to be around 8 million kami. Amaterasu, goddess of the sun, Inari, god of finance and prosperity, and Tenjin, kami of education, are some of the few kami you see while visiting shrine, as shrines are the worship place of the kami. It is also very likely to see them through Japan to show their significance. It is said that humans shall become kami after they die, and their families respect them as ancestral kami.
Oh yes, going off on what MICHEALA said about the figures worshipped by Shintoists, it brings us to talk about the core tenets and beliefs of the Shinto religion. Their understanding of the idea that everything, including mountains, rivers, and even animals, possess a spiritual energy or presence known as kami. Moreover, the first belief is for followers to stay clean or pure to nature and the world, as humans are born pure. It is important to Shinto beliefs to stay pure, as kigari, or acts of impurity regarded as evil, separate followers from kami, or the gods earlier discussed. According to bbc.co.uk, impurity or sins are things that come later in life, and that can usually be got rid of by simple cleansing or purifying rituals. Another belief of Shinto is mikoto, or sincerity in the heart. It is believed that if goodness and sincerity is not in your heart, all acts of Shinto religion are seen as pointless. The third belief of Shintoism to discuss is to take care of the natural world and environment, as the presence of kami is in nature. Finally, one of the core beliefs of Shinto is to host matsuri, or the togetherness of the Shinto community to praise the kami and offer one's thankfulness to the deity. bbc.co.uk discusses that these Shinto festivals generally combine solemn rituals with joyful celebration. These celebrations are seen to elevate the kami's energy and spirit among the followers present at the celebration. However, when discussing all the core beliefs and tenets of Shintoism, one might come to ask where this all started and where such beliefs and celebrations have spread to. Seen during the 6th century, the phrase Shinto was created to describe their previously existing faith away from Buddhism, which was the prevailing religion in the region of Japan. Shintoism coexisted with Buddhism in Japan and became highly relevant religion and way of life around 500 BCE. While it had not shown to spread outside the country of Japan, it did dominate the cultural forefront as it is practiced by nearly 80% of the population, according to Columbianerd.org.
As I continue off of Caroline's statements and we dive into if Shintoism created social structure, but first, before you can jump right into that question, you need to know what social structure is. Social structure is an arrangement of the religion whereby human beings in a society are basically ranked. So question is, did Shintoism create a social structure? Yes, it did. Let me explain to you how. According to the website Britannica, that is verified accurate, it states, based on the total identity of religion and state, and has close relations with the Japanese imperial family, it is a relatively new movement consisting of 13 major sects that originated in Japan around the 19th century, along with several others that emerged after World War II. Shintoism has many ranks going from merchants to emperor, which will be shown in my picture. Okay, so now we will move on to the next question together. It says, where was Shintoism dominant in 1450? The answer for this is Japan. You also have to remember that Shintoism was the only religion in Japan until the 6th century CE, when Buddhism came about. In the article BBC, it says that from the 6th century CE, the beliefs that are now known as Shinto were greatly altered by the addition of other ingredients. This statement is worded that Shintoism was the only religion and began to be altered by a new coming religion as called Buddhism. So by BBC, it states these religions were highly localized and not organized into a single faith, nor were they seen as a single religion. This statement is going off of the last quote, but Shintoism was highly localized, meaning or hinting being dominant in Japan.
Shintoism was very closely related to the state and the government of Japan up until around the end of World War II. Offerings were made by the government and the imperials to the Shinto gods every year, and they even prayed to them to protect their people and themselves. However, ceremonies were not the only thing dedicated to Shintoism and its many deities by the government. They had a motto that said, "Shinto ceremonies and political affairs are one and the same," which really describes how important the role of Shinto beliefs played into the affairs of the state. Shintoism was treated as the standard religion of Japan, and they had shrines built all over the country.
This is the commonly seen gate of the entrance to a Shinto shrine, also known as the torii. It symbolizes the transition from the mundane to the sacred, and is often red because red is the color of vitality and protection against the evil.
Shintoism was taught to elementary school children, and the state established most national holidays related to Shinto festivals. Things in place like this were called state Shinto, because the state's laws and decisions were being determined by the people's Shinto beliefs. Politics were greatly impacted by Shintoism, and it played a great role in people's political beliefs and decisions. In Shinto beliefs, women were seen as the spiritual leaders and allowed to be a part of the clergy alongside men. One of the most important gods in Shinto beliefs was a woman, and this showed in ceremonial practices by the people. For example, the leaders of the state and new people in power were given their divine rights by a female shaman who represented the sun goddess. Although women were seen as this by the religion and the people, it all changed when the Empire of Japan came into power. Women were slowly pushed out of these positions, they lost their right to priesthood, and the empire replaced them with men or official shamans picked by the government. Women were now seen as impure and were even banned from Shinto shrines because of their menstrual blood, which became a norm and taboo to this people and the Shintoism beliefs. Women were also forbidden from participating in parades and Shinto ceremonies like that because of their so-called impurities. Shintoism's treatment of women in the beginning was very good and equal to the treatment of men, if not better. But the roles of women and how they were seen all flipped, and the treatment they received was very poor and unfair when the Japanese Empire came to power.
And sadly, that brings us to the end of today's episode of The More You Shouldn't Know. For a final review of the main topics we discussed today, we started out by talking about who founded the religion of Shintoism. Then we went on to learn about the gods and other major figures. We discussed the core tenets and beliefs and the origin and spread of Shintoism. We also went on to discuss if it created any social structure and where it was regionally dominant by 1450. Finally, we ended the discussion with how did it impact politics in the region of Japan and Shintoism's treatment upon women.
Thank you for listening and watching today's conversation between Caroline, Michaela, Jonathan, and I.
And stay tuned to hear next week's episode of The More You Shouldn't Know. Bye!
Here's a list of our sites we use to find credible information in order to share the interesting details of the Shinto religion.